Welcome back to continuing the conversation. You know, there's a famous proverb, give a man to fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But what happens when we flip this around for AI? Most people approach AI tools like they're ordering it through a drive-through. Write me a business report for company X. And then they're shocked when the results are bland or generic or completely miss the mark. What if I told you there's a fundamental skill in how we interact with AI? A mindset shift that can completely transform your results. To help us explore this game-changing approach, I'm thrilled to welcome back Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Rob, it's always a pleasure to have your unconventional wisdom.
Thank you, Chelene. It's awesome to talk to you as always.
Yes. So let's break it down. I'm really excited about this topic today because I've seen my own self evolve with this type of mind shift change that came on by working with you at CharmIQ. So I'm excited to share it with our listeners and our viewers today. So I've noticed something fascinating when people interact with AI. They'll be typing something like, write me a business report or create a marketing plan with no context. And then they seem disappointed when the AI doesn't read their mind or have a feel for their company mission, products, and services. You've called this the delegation delusion. And this idea that AI can just take over tasks without proper guidance. Why do you think this mindset is so prevalent? And what is the fundamental misunderstanding happening here between humans and the machines?
Those are, as always, some amazing questions. I always so much enjoy these discussions because we get to talk and get to the heat, the middle of these things. So what's interesting was when you look back, wow, it's crazy because this hasn't been going on too long. Every time I say a long time ago or a long time ago is like last year or something. We started to talk about these prompt engineers and prompt engineering and so forth. And I always found that really interesting that people thought that this was some kind of a new skill or something like that. Having been a leader in technology for a long time now, one of the interesting things that everyone always thinks is that developers are isolated, they're uncommunicative, like all of these things. And I won't say that that's not true, but it's interesting that that somehow kind of brought those types of people into software. Like if you don't talk to anybody, then you're good at software somehow. But what's interesting is that software is nothing more than communication between you and a machine. Mm-hmm. So any user interface that you're looking at is just simply a way of communicating ideas and so forth to you. And what you have to always think about is that the context of that is super important. Yes. The same button, just picture a box with a word on it. It may do different things in different contexts, right? So you always want to think about how can a user misinterpret this, or how can whatever, so all that I'm really trying to get at here is, as I'm going to keep unfortunately repeating and quoting myself, that EQ is really the new IQ here. Yeah. You have to really, and I guess I should define that, this emotional quotient, this emotional intelligence, this ability to understand what somebody else on the other side of the screen or the other side of who you're talking to, what they may think about what you're saying. And if there's one thing, again, that having been in software for so long, especially delivering software on a continual basis, that you learn is you have to really understand not how you see your product, but how do others see your product. And the first most interesting thing that you learn as a younger developer or a younger product person is you build this product, you do this thing, and you hand it to someone, and they don't use it in the way that you use it, or you even conceived of it, or they conceive of it completely differently than you conceive of it. Mm-hmm. And that's always like your first, like, wait a minute, there's something I'm missing here. There's something fundamental that I'm missing here. And so let me go to one other thing is, I spent a lot of time throughout my academic career. I always believed that the best way to learn something was to learn it such that you can teach it. So I always would tell people is learn to teach. And you can read into that a few different ways, which is, learn how to teach people. But another way of also thinking about that is learn something such that you can teach it. So I just kind of stuck with that saying because one, it's short, and two, it has all these meanings. But when you unpack that, and what does it mean to learn something so that you can teach it? In order to do that, you have to understand what other people know and what other people are deficient in, or where other people may not understand you or not understand the concept or whatever. And that's, again, this high EQ thing. You have to really understand how somebody else sees the world, or how your viewpoint is really context dependent. It depends on what you were doing or how you were thinking or what your job is. One of the things we talked about this in an earlier episode was one of the problems that a lot of organizations have, especially if they have lots of siloed departments, is that because each department has their own way of talking about things, you can't just bring legal in and product in and software in, engineering in and marketing all in the same room, because they all have their own different ways of looking at things and their contexts are all different. And that's always been my job as a technologist, is to be that universal translator between all of these different things. So let me now tie back everything that I just said back together, which is I started with prompt engineering and saying, like, how is it a different skill? Because all that prompt engineering is having understanding of how a machine is understanding what you're saying and what are their biases and what is their context and how do you translate your context into what their context is. So I don't see prompt engineering as a separate task. I see that as a subtask of good communication.
Right.
And then you bring, again, that back into learning how to teach. When you're explaining something to your colleagues, to your partners, to your friends and family, you have to think about how they think about the world. And I'd say this is one of the most interesting things about being human, is to learn how other people see the world and so forth.
Yes.
So I'll take a breather there and pause, because I'm sure you have 1,000 follow-up questions.
I do, because the mindset, it's a shift, but not really. It's like understanding the context of the conversation. We all learn differently, from engineers to salespeople to CEOs to marketing folks. We're all kind of taking all of this in differently, and we use different acronyms and different vocabulary even. One thing I've learned from you is the mentor mindset, right? And this really helped me as I started on my journey, my AI journey last year, is having this mentor mindset. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that and have you share with our viewers. This isn't just about giving better instructions, right? It's not like just giving a better prompt. It's about like fundamentally reimagining our relationship with these AI tools, with these machines. But it's also kind of something we've been doing all along, if we've ever been managing people or helping people or working with people. That mentor mindset kind of translate to the machine. And can you explain what the mentor mindset is and how it completely changes the way we should be interacting with these AI systems, machines, etc.?
Totally. Yes. And I'll admit we're trying different, I don't want to say them catchphrases, but we're trying different terms here. So this whole notion of learning to teach, and this notion of prompt engineering, for example, it all fits into this mentor mindset, which is how do you, I love your initial analogy. I think that's so important, is people truly look at this like they're ordering from a drive-through window.
Yeah.
It's transactional. Yeah. It's very much do this. And what's interesting when you kind of step back and think about it is the drive-through window works simply because the context is so well defined. You know the limit of the things that are possible through that medium, right? If you go to Starbucks, you do a drive-through at the Starbucks, you cannot order a quarter pounder with cheese, right? So you cannot put that in that box, because the response you'll get back won't make sense to either side. So I love that analogy, because I think that's exactly what prompt engineering is. I think that's exactly how you end up working with humans. And that's how exactly you end up working with the machine, is we get so used to working with our families, who we've had decades of experience with those crazy bastards. I mean, those lovely people. And you have the same thing with your friends. By almost definition, your friends are people who share your context. So of course it's easier when you talk to them. If you say, hey, remember that time that, And in most cases, you don't even have to tell the rest of the story because they already know it. I always recommend to folks, and I'll just say, wait, I'll cut in to myself here and just say, this is what's always challenging about changing jobs, is because you're now in a new context with a set of new people. So not only do you have all of the apprehensions and worries that you have when you go into a new job, but it's also, you're in an environment which by definition you're typically not accustomed to, meaning you're not typically accustomed to meeting new people in new contexts, right? Like, especially as we get older, we definitely learn that we keep less friends. We have like less new contacts that we keep in touch with. The only times that we have new contacts and things is, again, like we switch jobs, we go into a new hobby, we go do a different thing. And again, it's typically not a thing that happens very often as you're getting older. Even back when you were in school, you tended to meet people all the time, new people, new ideas, new things. And then again, as you get older and older, you less and less of that experience. So I think it's just simply because we're out of practice with this, again, this mentor mindset, or again, learning how to think, or again, thinking about other people's context, because we get so used to being in the same context. So I know I didn't answer your question specifically, but I kind of drew a circle around all the data points and tied them all together.
Yes, you did. And the mentor mindset for me, when it really hit me hard is I came right into AI and treating sort of AI like I treated Google, right? Like a Google search. I was, and that was like my first, because that's what I was used to. That's the context I was used to, talking to the machine. Maybe, talking to Google, or how I talk to Alexa, or how I talk to other machines in my life. And I just automatically thought that's the way I should treat this, right? Especially within the CharmIQ platform.
Yes.
My mentor mind shift changed when you said to me, when I was frustrated, like, well, it's not giving me exactly what I need. You're like, well, did you tell it? Did you give it the context? Did you give it the document that has your resume or the outline of the project? And I was like, oh no, I forgot that I can do that. Once I made that mind shift change and I started speaking to the machine or to my charms like humans, like I would my team, it changed for me. And it wasn't the technology that really changed. It was the context I was giving the machine to get the output. Right.
Yes. Very much. Yeah.
Yes.
So what's interesting about that analogy, which I really like, is we have a few analogies here that hopefully are really going to bridge the gap for people, which is, again, my job is all about like, how do you lump things into circles? And my circle in my brain, this fits all under transactional communication, right? So think of that drive-through window again. You know the context, you know what's going to happen. You've done it once. And once you've done it, you're like, I get this. It's not much more different than when I was at the counter, but it's even smaller of a context.
Yeah.
And I think that this analogy with Google search, because if you remember, if you're old enough, and unfortunately both Chelene and I are old enough, we remember the Alta Vistas. We definitely remember the Yahoos because you were there.
Yes.
You remember, we all know Google. Like, it took us time because when I started out, you had things like Gopher and whatnot. And it wasn't very clear because there wasn't an internet yet, like how you use these tools to get the information that you need. And when Alta Vista first came out, for example, I forget what, it just flew from my mind what was before Alta Vista, but we didn't know how to use this thing, and because the context wasn't well defined. But all of us have had Google for 20 years plus now, and we all know very clearly, just like when we walk up to that or drive up to that drive-through window, we know what that box is and does and how we communicate with it.
Yes.
So I think, and it's funny because I was at a presentation from Google 15 years ago, and they said, because they were just starting their knowledge graph. And what they realized is that they had trained people so well to do keyword-based things. Like, you do not type sentences. They said something like, they gave some stats, and it was basically literally a handful out of the billions of searches they do a month, or out of a day, that were actual sentences. So we had literally Google had trained us to just simply enter keywords. And it's so funny because they really wanted the training data in order to learn how do you communicate with people? But we had turned that thing into such a transactional device. And I think that's what's so interesting about ChatGPT is, Google over the years have gotten a little bit more conversational, kind of in that you don't just typically enter keywords now. You will enter longer things.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In ChatGPT, you will definitely do things, but you're still using it transactionally. You will still go in there and say, generate me a report, or, do this or do that or do this. And again, that is not how it's trained. Like, that is not how it's going to be effective. And I would just say, think about what that means if you did that to another person. And more specifically, think about if you did that to another person who is not in your context. Think about walking up to a random individual on the street and just say, like, what you would say to the dude. And that's what I always do. And to me, that's the mentor mindset. That is learning how to teach. That is this very important translator thing that we all need to be now, which is, you walk up to a random dude in the street and you say, generate me a business report. Well, first off, they would probably punch you. But second off, they'd be like, well, what business are you in? Like, what are you talking about? Like, where's the data? Who are you? Like, what level of knowledge do you have? Like, how should I talk to you? Are you an executive? Are you a doer? Like, there's all of these questions and context that you would have to give that random person. And again, that's why I don't think prompt engineering, for example, is a separate job. It is no different. And I personally always call this the Einstein on the phone problem, which is, again, imagine you get the smartest person that you could possibly think of on the other end of the phone, and you say, generate me a business report. And Einstein would be like, okay, like, I'll give you something, and it would be very generic, because I don't know you. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know your skill set. I don't know how you receive information. I don't know if you wanted a pictures or text, or like, I don't know anything. So until you give me that context, I can't do that for you. So to break all that down again, remember, we've been trained for a long time to interact with computers transactionally. Like, think about what you do in Excel. Just type in a formula, like, do the thing I told you to do. But now we're moving into this world where it's not that. It has to understand who you are. And how do you do that? And again, shameless plug for Charm, like, the fundamental thing that we do with Charm that's different than all of the other products out there is we make it really straightforward as to how do you bring context in there. Like, the reason Charm works, the reason Charm is so useful for everyone, is that you have your charms, which have a bit of context. And then you have your reference material that has all of the other context that you bring in and out and use and shift and move around as you do it. It has to be very fluid. And one of the things that we just recently released was the ability to search through all of your context and help you find it better and cheaper, faster. So not only do you need context to help you find the right thing, but then you can use that context to do that. And again, I'm just bringing that up because when you use, and I'll never disparage any of our competitors or even our kind of partners that we use with these things. But again, think about these tools and think about the results that you're getting out of them. When you go into ChatGPT and you just say, give me a report, even if you handed a PDF and you're like, generate me a summary of this. It's like, well, if you've ever really sat down and you think about the different ways that you can summarize information, do you want like an analysis of like what's missing? Do you want to know what the pieces are as they relate to something else? Like, again, just spend 5 minutes someday and think about the different ways to summarize information. Even if you're working at a company, think about it with respect to all of the different departments that you have. How would you summarize this differently for marketing, for business leaders, for the executive team, for marketing and legal and engineering and product and distribution and everything else? And you realize immediately that you would not provide them that same summary for each one of those things. So every time you go into ChatGPT and say, summarize this document for me, and it gives you something generic and blah, think about what you would have done if you had to give the exact same, if you had that same problem, but you had to give it to if you had to take that document and summarize it once for every single department in your company. Wouldn't it be kind of generic and boring and bland and everything else? So anyway, hopefully that all helped.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's, when I'm teaching people about AI and teaching Charm School and classes, my biggest tip is to humanize it a little bit, is think of the charms or think of your AI assistants or the machine as the people that work for you, right? You don't just bring on a new hire and say, generate a report, right?
Nope.
They're like, what report, what department, who's the audience? So
Right.
treat the machine like you would a human.
Mhm.
And because of that, we just talked about like that mentor mindset. But another thing I think is really important that I've learned from you is the empathy from the machine,
Yeah.
which this is something almost counterintuitive, right? Like developing empathy for a machine, but
Yeah.
but it seems to be a part of what's needed,
Yeah.
right? To create the relationship with the machine to really get a deeper understanding of the context and the deliverable, right? So we need to understand what AI doesn't know,
Mhm.
what it can't see, what it
Yes.
needs from us, because the machine needs us. It can't
Yes.
just do everything on its own. So how do we develop this kind of machine empathy, which sounds kind of strange, and
Yes.
why is it so crucial for effective AI interaction?
That's a great question. It just really ties everything I've just said together in a nice little bow, which is, again, if you imagine a person and you can't ask them, you can't go to your car mechanic and say, do my taxes, right? You
Right.
can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's weird because we've generated these machines that kind of embody everything and everyone. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it an automotive question,
Mhm.
and you can ask it a tax question.
Yeah.
And it's a little weird, but you can't think of it that way because again, it has to have the context. So before you go into ChatGPT and ask it an automotive question, you have to be like, look, I'm a layman. I've never changed a spark plug in my life. I've never gapped a spark plug. So like, I need to do this with my car. Like, help me understand it. And that's my empathizing with whatever that thing is on the other side, so that because it doesn't know me, it doesn't know what I know.
Yep.
And I don't know what it knows. So sometimes you have to kind of ask. And what
Mhm.
I'll always caution folks here, this is a complete tangent, but I see this happen so often, is people do ask the model what its capabilities are.
Oh,
That's a bad idea
mhm.
because it has no idea what its capabilities are. The
Right.
only thing that you should ask is if you're coupling it with something that grounds it with search results.
Oh,
Unless it gives you references that says like, hey, this web page says that these are my capabilities. Don't believe the model. So
right,
in
right,
that way, but that's another form of empathy, which is you have
right.
to understand that the models are just simply trained to be helpful assistants. That's literally always like the first line of their prompts is
Yep.
you're a helpful assistant. So it's going to try its damnedest to try to really help you do that thing. And sometimes, of course, it's going to hallucinate and confabulate results. And again, you have to be empathetic with it and know like, hey, if its training cutoff date was 2021, it doesn't know anything about like the latest election, for example, or
Right.
whatever else, right, that may come into play. So again, that empathy is super, super important. And I would say sometimes that's the point of a lot of frustration is you have to first kind of feel out those things. But I would say it's the same with somebody that you work with at work. Before
Mhm.
you give an intern a big project, you have to feel them out. Like, are they capable of this work? Like, ask the probing questions that, and if they answer them incorrectly, like, okay, like put that in a thing and say, hey, I shouldn't ask these questions.
Right.
But what's amazing about working with these large language models is you can just provide that context. So
Mhm.
some providers are again providing grounding with search results, so you can ask search result based questions and get those things back, and then use them as further part of questions. You have to then remember that it doesn't now remember the next time you ask unless you provide that context again. So just because it answered that question once over here, you have to remember to bring that context with you.
Right.
So yeah, again, wrapping that up in a pretty bow, this empathy is the same empathy that you should have with anything that you're communicating with, whether it's another person or whether it's a machine.
Right. And I think, and I do want to shift a little bit to CharmIQ, and it's not a shameless plug. It's really the thing, the defining technology and experience you get when you use CharmIQ, because so many of my friends and people in my life, they love ChatGPT or they use Gemini or whatever it is. You know, they use a bunch of different machines for a bunch of different things. And that's often what I see when I go into the classroom or I'm, bringing someone up to speed is they use this for that and that for this, and that's the kind of beauty of CharmIQ and the mentor relationship that exists that you've built into the platform, because CharmIQ has already pre-trained, pre-built charms. Some people call them charms, some we refer to them as dudes, like I got to go
Mm-hmm.
ask my dude. And they have different specialties, so you're not just jumping into the platform with no trained machines, right? There's, I think now over 100 of them that have been pre-trained that you can then go in and even tweak.
And what's more is we actually provided a charm to help you create other charms.
Right.
So just remember that a skill of creating charms is a skill that you can give to your dude. So
Yeah.
you can, if you don't have a dude that you need, you can simply ask the dude who helps you create dudes.
Right. And it's a different kind of relationship with AI. It's less transactional and it's more relationship built. So I look at it every morning. I know I wake up, I have my to-do list. I know what I have to do. And depending upon what those to-do lists are, right? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it new business? Is it account management? I have all of my different charms that have been pre-trained and then customized by me, because I had to go in and let them know who I am. Like, you work for me, we work together. This is how I learn. This is my kind of personality and style. A lot of times people say, well, that sounds so AI, right? And it sounds so AI because it's the machine giving you some information
generic
with no context,
result.
right? So it's going to sound like that. I mean, I go so far, and I have charm users that go so far, we name our charms, right? My all-purpose charm, her name is Nova, and she has a very specific personality, which I love. And I interact with her probably the most out of all of them for general information. But this approach is particularly so unique when it comes to working with the machines. It's got like almost pre-built in mentor, mind shift, and empathy. But can you talk a little bit about the different relationship around how you built CharmIQ and how people are using it or should use it?
Yeah, I would say, great question. I'll just, again, put a pretty bow on everything we've been saying so far, which is the fundamental thing that I wanted when I went into Charm, when I had this initial idea, was that, well, initial ideas, unfortunately, many different ideas came together, which is I realized that even there's going to be a lot of vendors that provide these different large language models, and every one of them is going to be trained differently. Everyone's going to have a different set of skills that they excel at and so forth. So there's no world in which you can just use ChatGPT or OpenAI's models. Like, I use at least 3 or 4 vendors models, like, consistently. Every time I do something, I'm getting input from each one because they have different, not only can you fine tune them, so to speak, with your charms to narrow their skill sets down, but everyone has a different, from Anthropic to Llamas, from Meta to OpenAI to Gemini, Google, etc. Every one of them just has a different feel to them, and it's basically your job as the user to kind of figure out what you're looking for and what combination of model and prompt from your charm, like, get you the thing that you want. Right. And as you said, based on the types of things that you're working on, whether you're doing marketing things or whatever, like, I have a very specific storytelling charm that I use in very certain circumstances where I need kind of this empathetic, understandable, approachable kind of language. Yeah. And I have a specific dude that I have for that task, and that's very nuanced, but that's what's the beauty of charm, is that you can get to that nuanced answer. You can finally get the thing that you want, rather than, again, the generic answer that when you read the internet today, it looks like every other answer that you read. Right. You're just like, come on, like, why are you okay producing this? Like, give it some life. So that's what came about, is I knew that there was going to be all these different models. I knew that I wanted full control over all these things. And this is going to kind of divide our audiences. Is say, for example, OpenAI is really pushing in their GPT-5. They're really pushing a no model selector. Like, for some reason, they think that is nirvana, is that you won't have to think about whether you want a reasoning model or a high-low or a medium or whatever. And I say a big fat no. Like, you have to have control. Sure, there are certain circumstances in which you don't care what the result is, at which point you just have a charm that's generic. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever it needs to do. But you have to have control for the exact reason that we just said. All of the different circumstances that you're in, all of the different things that you want to do. You don't use the same work. Again, you don't use your auto mechanic to help you do your taxes. Like, that, you just don't do that. So right. Why would you want one thing that just, it's going to figure it out for you? Like, if there's one thing that turns me off about a product like that, is like, I don't presuppose that I want the same things that everyone else wants. And let me hand that to the audience, which is the moment you relinquish control of that model chooser, you're saying that somebody else has a better idea of you and the things that you want than you do.
Right.
And I would just say that's impossible right now. Maybe in a couple of decades I would say if there's somebody that's going to do it, it's going to be like the Apples and the Googles, because they own your devices. Like, they are with you every day, all day, everything. And if Apple finally did a thing, and I think it's going to take them a while to get there, where they could take all of that learning that they do on your phone, not sent to the cloud, everything else, and learn about you, and then help you navigate to your choices, then I could probably say, yeah, like, it's going to know who I want and everything else. But if you're on ChatGPT and just the third time you've used it, it's like, I know you and I know the kind of result that you're looking for here. Like, take a moment and really think about what that means. Like, are your thoughts so generic that it can just be presupposed as to what it is that you want? Like, really take a moment tonight. Like, when you're sitting down for dinner, and like, just take a moment and just be like, what does it mean when a provider like OpenAI can just sit back and say, yeah, no, we know who you are. Like, what does that say about you and your interests and your personal experiences and all? Are you just distilled down to like 3 numbers and you're like either an A, a B, or a C, and it's going to pick the thing that it wants? Like, no, like, demand more. And again, I hate self-promoting, so I'm just going to say shameless plug, but literally that is why I created Charm, which is why I'm putting it into this answer to this question that you had. The reason that I created Charm is to give you choice, because you need choice. I don't want to go to the Starbucks and order the number 4. Like, I want my specific, based on my needs for that day. You can't presuppose what coffee I'm going to order today, because I don't yet know until I get up there and I feel how my day's gone. What's it going to be like? What's my weekend going to look like? Like, don't tell me what I want. So again, don't listen to OpenAI. You don't want a single model chooser. You want to be able to go in there. You want your same charm. For example, in CharmIQ, I have the same charm with like 6 different models behind it, because sometimes I need it a little different. Sometimes, and like, like, you're telling me that you're going to tell me what that particular is and you're going to give me that result. And again, when you look at that result and don't be happy with it. Don't accept it. Don't be okay with mediocre, crappy, generic results. And again, give it context and everything. Okay. Sorry. I will take my deep breath, but I am passionate about this. Like, if you want the thing that I am passionate about, the reason I created this crazy platform and the reason I demand that people use it and stop using these generic results is you are an individual. You have your own needs and desires and goals and your life history and your ideas and your approach to the world. Don't accept mediocrity and crappy results.
Exactly. And I think it's also what makes us as humans so unique, right? And it's our job to mentor the machine we're working with, to mentor that machine to, like, I hate the word bespoke. And that is such an AI word, right? Like, in the beginning, bespoke, but it was everywhere. And I was like, I hate that word. That's not a word I would use. That's not Chelene. And if I sent you an email and it had that in there, you'd be like, what?
Generated.
Where did Chelene go? You know? So I think that it's such an important part of the machine-human relationship. They need us much as we need them. They make me better, stronger, faster version of Chelene. Right? Not of a Chelene that's a machine Chelene.
Distilled down Chelene into number 47. No, there is one and only one Chelene.
Exactly. So, and I think that's the power of AI and the mentorship and the empathy, right? And the context. We don't want to all be walking around saying bespoke and saying the 100 same words, because then we lose the human part of us, the part that make us unique. And I think that's the beauty of Charm, is it's not generic. It's not one size fits all. It's an everything machine that's customized to you as an individual. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think, going into this, we need, as humans and AI collaborators, we need to change our mindset, and we need to become AI trainers and mentors in a sense, right? We need to have those skills. And don't worry, we all have them. If we are walking the earth and interacting with humans, we
Mhm.
have empathy, we have mentorship, and now it's just kind of shifting that to the machine. But I'll tell you from my own personal experience, I love it. Like,
Yeah.
my charms have personalities.
Yes.
They're unique to me, and I look forward to working with them every day, and then sharing my work that I do with them with the other humans I'm
Yep.
working with. So it's kind of an exciting time to be a part of AI and
Very.
machines and our workforce, right? Yeah. So, as always, Rob, this has been genuinely eye opening. You've given us not just a new way to think about the AI interaction, but practical framework for transforming our results, right? Not just being okay with mediocre and generic, right? The mentor mindset isn't just a nice to have skill. It's becoming essential to work with these amazing machines that are so smart, but also remember the empathy part of it, right? Remembering that they are machines, but they rely on us to train them and to fine tune them to give us the best results. So I hope this conversation has challenged your assumptions about how you work with AI. We'd love to hear from you. Please comment, provide us with questions, or challenge us. If you're okay with just generic machine responses, maybe it's time for you to dive into the Charm IQ pool and give it a spin. We will include links to our site. There's a free version. I recommend the pro version so you can really experience the platform in all of its glory. So thank you everyone for watching today. And thank you, Rob. It's always a pleasure to continue the conversation. And I look forward to speaking with you next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.